Please direct your attention to mini lecture slides for all of the things that we're going to be showing you. Our lovely designers today are Karen Dimmick of Arcane Covers, Sarah Waits from The Illustrated Page, S.J. Fowler of Night Witch Illustrations, and Jamie Dalton of Small Magnetra's Design. All right. I'm going to mute myself now. Have fun.
Okay, I will.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to host it so that it's like we can pull it up. We've all had a chance to look at all the covers you guys have sent in already. And so we've got an idea of who's going to be replying to each of them. And I will try and keep as close as I can on time. So we were going to start with Ashley's Cozy Mystery, and I've done it just in the order that we got hold of them. So that's the order. And we'll start with that one. And we have comments from that one in a little spreadsheet we've got, both Jamie and SJ. So if you guys want to just chip in, that'd be great.
Yeah. Sorry, just a second. Let me pull up. My brain is like glitching really bad right now, so I'm like pulling up so I can look at the cover while I talk, just so I can remember everything I said.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm like, if I had a way to pull them up, that would be easier to like show so everyone else could learn as well, because a lot of them, the feedback crosses over. Do you have that ability, Karen?
The covers it up in the mini lecture slides channel.
Okay.
Yeah, just
so everyone can see what we're talking about.
All right. Okay, so I will say with this, so I work in a lot of genres. I do some cozy. I will say that all of these definitely said, at least to some degree for me, that it's cozy. So that was really, really good. B, in this one, the art style itself isn't as popular in cozy right now with readers. It actually pulls a little bit more into like a beach kids book type of art style, so I would definitely avoid that one. I love the angle of the my brain, I'm sorry. I love the angle of the envelope on A. But I feel like this art style of C is the strongest for this genre, is the most marketable. My biggest critique on this, there's two things that I really wanted to mention. One is that the color of the envelope on this doesn't quite pop out at you as much as it needs to for it to be the title. So I would definitely suggest maybe switching it over to like a yellow or a, you know how like blue can be both dark but bright at the same time? Something so that it's a high contrast and like pops. And then the other element that this I feel is missing a bit is Cozy has a habit of being, their covers are organized chaos. So they tend to have a lot of detail. And I think that like if you could pull in that little beach ball that's poking out the bottom, and maybe add in like some other beach elements, even if they're not in the book, they're still tropes for a beach. They are still tropes for cozy. So like a beach umbrella, or like sand castle building shovel and that kind of thing. Like if you had a few other little elements on the beach as well, I think that this could be a very, very marketable cozy cover. I think SJ, you were the other one.
Yeah. So I said that I do read a lot of cozy mysteries myself, mostly paranormal, but still regular. And C does fit the best for the current trending style right now, in terms of reading as cozy mystery. And I agreed with Jamie here that cozy mystery covers often contain a whole little scene with a lot of knickknacks and fun things on their covers, like beach balls or a chair or a little fence, like Jamie was saying. So if you could put some of those items in like the foreground to build up the cover a little bit, that would level it up. And I also agreed about I really liked in A how the letters at an angle and everything and
Love
pushed
that.
up. Yeah, it's so cute. And if you even made it just a smidge bigger, you'd make some more room for the title. And I suggested some typography font changes for the author name and possibly the title. Because like on B, the author name font is a little better in regards to what you're aiming for. Something like a golden book or golden brook typography for the author name. And then for the title, I suggested something like a Bellico or an Odette, which looks like a script font that you see on a lot of Cozy Mystery covers, but it's a little more readable. That way you're playing off the letter and the tropes as well.
Awesome.
I had also mentioned, sorry, I realized I didn't say it. I also had mentioned in my notes on the fence, if you're a little confused on what we mean, look up Charleston, South Carolina beaches, and they're all over down there. You'll be able to see a lot of pictures of like what that looks like, because it's not just like a cute little picket fence. It's kind of like a specific beach type of style for it.
Yeah, with a lot of that big fluffy grass.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, I'd also just say don't be worried about if you want to make the envelope and the letter bigger. I wouldn't worry if it overlaps the lighthouse some, because as long as you can tell it's a lighthouse, I think that's fine.
Same with the
Agreed.
boat. I wouldn't worry too much about if you lose the boat because you cover it with the envelope. That is okay, especially if you add the extra details up at the front.
Yeah, I think that's some really good feedback, and I think you've got a way to go forward with that one. So we're going to move on to the next one, and the next one is Mr. Steel Supernatural, and it seems to be a collection of artwork rather than an actual cover. And again, we have Jamie and SJ who've replied on the sheet, so I'm going to let those two take it over as well.
Okay, I didn't make any comments on the sheet. I just have my own notes.
Okay,
But I'm happy to let Jamie and SJ go first.
Well, you're the one who does the most illustrations, so why don't you start?
Me? Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
You
didn't expect
illustrate
that.
more than we do, so.
You do?
Well, I guess I would say, so this is, what's the genre? Paranormal? Is that it?
I think it was YA
Action
paranormal.
suspense. Natural, supernatural action suspense.
Okay, it's not really giving me the genre. I guess I'm more familiar with fantasy and paranormal stuff, but usually when you look at this sort of illustrated book cover, you have an entire scene. And this is kind of, I can see it's probably taking inspiration from the Animorph covers, which are very middle grade, and I guess it looks more adult, but it's not really concept-wise where it needs to be for genre. The art itself is really good, though.
Yeah.
The rendering is all really lovely.
Yeah, it is. Cool. I know the other two had some concerns over like the commercial use rights, so do one of you
Yeah,
want to jump in with that?
Jamie can go first.
Yeah, I can do that. So I'm also an author and a cover designer. So I'm coming at these studying marketing from both sides, and almost all of us, I think all of us actually have experience with both for this. So just remember that when we're giving this feedback, we study the markets and we have to study the legalities of this for both. Most artists, when you hire them, and you may have already done this, so like please don't take offense. But most artists, when you hire them, most of them tend to not actually even have a contract yet. So you definitely want to make sure that anytime you hire anyone to do anything for you for any part of your book, that you have a contract that is giving you commercial rights, which means that they're not going to sell it again to someone else. And basically it allows you to use it for commercial purposes. So just make sure you have that in writing. Just wanted to make sure of that. This, like, immediately my first instinct was Animorphs, which I'm like, when I was younger, I was obsessed with. So like that was my first, I love it. I did want to say too, if you look at all three of your art options, all three of them actually are aimed at a completely different target audience, and they all tell that your book is different. So you'll want to think a little bit about if you're going to use this, but I definitely agree that it's not giving the right intensity and grittiness that your genre is actually going for. But I would suggest, I would very, very highly suggest using this art for marketing using this art maybe as chapter headers, using it to like level up and make something really, really special and unique. But for example, the typography really is mostly used for more like historical type of stuff. You're going to want to do a sans serif that is fairly blocky. And yeah, really, I'm trying to remember. Oh, I had a list of authors that I suggested to look at, and I can't remember who they were off the top of my
I've
head.
got them here. Shannon Mayer, Ernest Dempsey, Hunter Blaine, and they were the three you mentioned. Oh, and Leah
Yeah.
Stone.
So I would suggest looking at their covers, because when you're doing this sort of thing, the biggest thing you want to do when you're making a book cover is you want to make something unique but marketable. So that's part of why looking for comps is so important, because literally what you want to do is you want to take a couple elements from your comparable authors, so that when a reader finishes that book and they're looking for their next one, they're going to see something that triggers from a comparable author, and they're going to go, oh, this book is going to be somewhat similar, not exact, but has those same tropes that I'm looking for. Because most authors are mood readers. And so that's what they're looking for, is they're looking for something that's going to trigger them subconsciously and mentally to go, oh, this book is like this one in those ways, and I want that. And right now, I think all three of these options are so unique that you're going to have a very difficult time pulling from any comps for the audience. I think this will actually hurt you in sales if it's used as a cover, but I think it will help you in sales if you use it as interior, show that off, and use it for marketing images.
Yeah.
Oh, just on the subject of comp titles, I'd say you want something that's the same target age range, so like adult if you're writing towards adult, and ideally something that's, it doesn't have to be like this year, but fairly recent, because you want to stay up to date. So like it's fine to draw inspiration from Animorphs and to use that in your marketing somehow, but I think for the cover you want to position it differently, since I'm assuming this isn't middle grade. So
Yeah. And for anyone listening as well, you know, we covered a lot of why you want to like stick with the tropes, what the tropes are, how to do the research and all of that lot in part 1. So go back and listen to that if you haven't listened to that already. I'm going to move on, since we're going to end up over time otherwise. I'm going to move on to number 3, which is Lil Sea Salt. And it's fantasy, and its sub is fairy tale mythology, is what we've been told. So, again, Jamie's written the most on this. I know this is a genre she actually does quite a lot in. So I'll let her take over.
Yeah, I do a lot in this one. So I will say my first impression when I looked at this was actually like a cute teen contemporary romance. That was my first instinct. And so the font especially pulls in that kind of direction. Fantasy, normally you really want to do a sans serif font. For this area, right now, either an actual... I can see that this was kind of an attempt to go in a... what's it called? In like a typography-based cover. At the moment, the art tells me absolutely nothing about what this book is about. So the trick to doing a typography or object-based cover, because they are very big for fantasy, is that you need to have a couple elements that are like hints at your book. A couple little things, because again, it goes back to the tropes. You need to have something that has those little tropes that you can hint at to your potential authors of, oh, you know, I'm in the mood for, like, for example, if, I know this is not a retelling, but like dark fantasy. I write YA dark fantasy for the most part. And that uses, for object-based ones, it uses a lot of, object and typography. It uses a lot of thorns. It uses a lot of high contrast, but still illustrated They're really, I will say, you would think that typography and object-based covers are super, super easy, but I think all of us will agree they are actually much harder, especially to make a marketable version of an object or typography-based
Yeah.
cover.
Yeah, so
You,
hard.
you have to be very good at typography.
I feel like so many of the fantasy ones use the same sort of objects because you need to signal it's fantasy. So you've got so many swords, so many crowns, and you've got to take that and do something different with it. Although with this one, if it's rivers, you could probably do a compass or a ship, maybe.
I actually do quite a lot of typography covers, and I hadn't realized that's where you were going with this. The whole art with a typography cover is you make the typography the art, and at the moment, your picture behind is just competing and you can't read the title, so that ceases to be a typography cover. So what you want to do if you want a typography cover is to do the typography first and make that the artwork, and then start finding other objects that are, like Jamie said, related to your story and things, and weave them in and out of the typography in a way that leaves the typography as the focus of the whole thing. So if that's the way you're wanting to go, that's what needs to change.
I'll say, I know we need to move, but I will say this, because of what I do see, what I think would be really marketable and really, really cool, just with the little bits that I've seen, I think that if this had a background that really pulled in the river and the stars and turned the typography almost looking like it is a river, or like it is, like combined those elements specifically and used those as your biggest thing and made sure to keep depth, I really think this could be a really cool cover if you decided to rethink it a little bit and allow it to do that. It will be a difficult one, though, to DIY.
Yeah.
I'd also be careful with, right now it feels hard to read the text because behind it's very busy and parts of it are very light. So you want the area behind the text to contrast with the text to keep things readable. And a good way to check this is to look at it in black and white. And you want things to be roughly a similar shade of gray or very dark gray if you have white text.
Yeah, it's got to pop. Okay, so we're going to move on to, I've got hoodies. This is Mystery Psych Horror, and let me read this out. And if I should add, it was drawn by me and meshed together with Canva in like a few minutes. This is from the author. So I want any comments to be focused more on the illustration itself and less on the font, though any and all feedback is welcome. Okay.
Totally get it. That would be me too. I think
Yes,
I was
you
the main
would.
one who did this one as well.
Yes.
I will say you have some serious art skills. Just to start off from that, you have some serious art skills. And I think you're definitely going in the right direction. My biggest thing is most of your readers are only going to see this in thumbnail. So even the size that's pulled up on like my screen right now, it's most people when they're scrolling on their phone in a split second are only going to see a quarter of that size. So I really, really like the art, but what I would suggest doing is making the art itself higher contrast from the black so that the white and the red will really pop. It really, I know you said not to talk about the typography. I think you're heading in the right direction. What I think you should do is take some time and study, like really look at your target audience. A lot of times we look at just like the general, oh, I'm so sorry. Genre. But look at your actual target audience. I think, Karen, is this another one I had a couple suggestions on authors or books?
Yes. Saviva could be really cool for this, like Stitched by Elena Stovall or Fey Games by Karen Litch. That's a Melissa cover.
Yeah, and Sveva, S-V-E-V-A, is a font. I would definitely suggest looking at that for this. It is one that is creeping into this genre, so it still feels fresh for this genre, but it would definitely add a big punch And I think for the title, it could really, really make this pop. But yeah, my biggest suggestion on this is just to make the art itself higher contrast so that it's brighter so you can see it better. And actually some of it maybe thicken up the lines some so it's easier to see in thumbnail. But I think you're going in the right direction, definitely.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one, which is Catherine Urban Fantasy. That's all the information I have about it. And I'm going to let SJ take over this one since she's our urban fantasy expert.
Oh man, I was so excited for this one. I was going to say that this was a really great start, genre-wise. It pretty much nails it. I'll admit that I did a little a little diving into the actual author who like put their name on this just to like check out what the blurb was, because there's so many specific routes you can go with paranormal romance and urban fantasy, and they have a lot of very specific tropes, and this cover is nailing a lot of them. It's reading as like vampire suspense in the paranormal realm. I mean, you have blood in the title, you have red going on, you have the city in the background, and you have a girl who's like in a tank top, which is all things that you expect to see in this genre. And to level this up, I would say that the typography needs a little bit of work. I mean, it's beautiful. It looks beautiful, but the expectation in this genre is for it to have like a silver sheen. So I would look into some maybe silver metallic effects instead. Additionally, I was saying in my little Google sheet that making a little bit of more contrast between your background and your character would help, because in thumbnail you want your character to pop out. So we do a lot of rim lighting is what it's called. You know, when you look at the dramatic movies or dramatic covers, you see like that glowing rim light around the character to make them really pop out from the background. And my last little bit here that I was going to say is the turquoise and red color scheme was very popular for vampire suspense in like 2021. It was like everywhere. Everybody was doing it. So it has unfortunately fallen a little bit out of popularity right now. So if you want to stay like on trend color-wise and maybe be a little more evergreen, if you will, evergreen being you can last through all the trends, I would maybe switch your blue to more of like a cool neutral tone instead of that bright turquoise. And that if you change your font to silver, it will still match that blue cool tones, like more of a neutral color. But that would be my suggestions. Otherwise, it's really amazing so far, and I was super excited when I saw this one.
Yeah, I had similar feedback because I do some urban fantasy as well. And I've got silver text, got to be silver text because that's just so key to the genre. The other thing for me is her hair is dark on a dark background, so you just don't see it. And that hair is it's a thing people seem to like in the genre, and they want long flowing hair. So make that stand out with this rim light, put a glow behind her so that you can actually see it. And that will bring her the focus of the reader into her face, which is where you want it, because that's the focus of the artwork.
Yeah, I agree.
Something you could try is enlarging the figure and having her overlap the text a little bit at the top of her head. It's not necessarily something you have to do, but it'd be a way to get more contrast on her hair, and it tends to look interesting visually.
Yeah. I actually had that in the notes as well. I would zoom in as well, and I would put the title at the bottom, because the title can be seen over her legs, and that way you've got more sort of space for her at the top, and like Sarah said, you can then make her stand out better as well.
For sure.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. J.W. Ben, and it's Lit RPG. So I'm going to take this one first off. So this one, there's two parts to this one. First off, at first glance, it absolutely nails the genre. We're just talking about the yellow one at the moment. This one nails the genre for the lich part, okay? Unfortunately, the reason it nails the genre is it is a single image from Deposit Photo from Grand Failure, and a lot of lit RPG authors use Grand Failure's designs, which means that you're liable to have somebody else who's got the same cover, or more or less the same. It has a different person on it. So I would, if you've got the ability, I would merge it with one or more other images, just so that you've got something a little more unique. Grand Failure also isn't sort of like known, if you like, for just being the one piece of artwork. He's more of a concept designer and stuff, so you're looking at the picture in a much larger space than you would a thumbnail of a book cover. So it's quite different when you're a book cover designer than just a concept artist designer. So you want to be able to focus people in very, very quickly as a book cover designer. And for this, to do that, I would add more glow behind the lich. Glow is kind of almost a trope in the genre as well. It's all very brightly coloured for the most part, not all. So having that glow would make it look more with the genre, if you like. Now we come to the little guy at the bottom. He is looking a little pasted on. I think you need to match the art style a little bit better on that one. And try and sort of blend him in using the same colours, because the lich isn't the same colour and the ground isn't the same colour, whereas the guy is very black. So he's looking a little pasted on, so you need to do some colour balancing on that one. The other thing is, and the big thing is the topography. Firstly, it's too squished. There's not enough space at the top or the bottom for, sort of like, especially if you get to paperback, it's just going to get cut off. So you need to bring them in further, but as it is, that's going to put your title over your main focus, which is the guy, your main character. Sorry, not your main focus, over your main character. So what I would do is I would crop it differently. I would move the lich and the whole of the background up a bit along with your main character and have much more space at the bottom. Leave enough space at the top for your title name, but have a lot more space at the bottom, and then you can really spread that title out and make it like nail the genre. Because at the moment, it's not greatly nailing the genre either. I would go and have a look at like James Hunter, Dakota Kraut. Those kind of guys tend to have the best covers. There are a few, obviously, like sort of Travis Bagwell, that are very different, so I wouldn't look at their covers. But I would look at the ones that are defining the genre and have a look and see what their text is doing and see how you can change that up for that. So has anyone else got any comments on that before I move to the blue one?
No, I mean, basically everything you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to move to the blue one. This one has the same problem, that kind of ghost thingy in the background. That's another of Grand Failure's designs. So again, you're liable to see that on someone else's cover. The problem here is you've done your best to like combine different images, but the problem comes is that they're in different perspectives. So if that all existed in reality in the same space, if your ghost guy was upright, your arch would be leaning backwards, your guy would be pretty much at 45 degrees to the floor, and the floor from the arch would be kind of like you were going uphill. So it doesn't work together as an image. So you need to think about perspective for that one. That's the biggest issue for that. The other thing is, what did I write here? So you've got like the front guy is photo quality. He's obviously a photo, and the ghost guy is illustrated, and the archway and the ground are photo quality. So it doesn't kind of go together. I know the Lit RPG readers they're very, very into illustration. They are fairly forgiving, but they will like give you hassle for a cover that isn't looking like it's in the same art style from my experience. So I would try and get the guy at the front and the archway more illustrated. That's the biggest thing on that. The next one, again, you've got the text a little more space, but it could use just a little more. The title as also doesn't kind of work with the artwork as such. If you look at it in thumbnail, it's very thin font, so it's sort of disappearing on the thin bits of the letters. Since this is, I don't know if it's the same book or whether it's the same series. I can't work that out, so having just looked at it, they're both the same title. So if it's the same book and it's one or the other, I'd pick the yellow one. If it's a series, I'd use the same fonts on both. Because I know in Lit RPG, typically the series name is the actual big title that you use, and then you put the title of the book underneath, almost like the series name for any other genre.
What they've done with this.
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're on the right mode. But I think it was these are definitely the same series, and you did the right thing of doing the series name large, like she said, and doing the book title small underneath, because I can see that they're two different
they are
books.
Different. Okay.
But yeah, she's definitely right. You are missing out on a huge branding opportunity by not using the same fonts and same coloring and that kind of thing between the two.
Yes. And the artwork can be different. That's the thing about Lit RPG. They don't look the same in a series. The books tend to look very different, but the typography is always the same across series. So you need to fix that. So anyone got anything else they want to add to those?
No, you're the expert in this one, so.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it really well. And like honestly, if you nail the branding with the typography, I think that you're going to be, and like, it definitely gives you a lot more leeway with the art. So yeah.
Cool. Okay. So number 8, I've just got middle grade, YA fantasy, or possibly middle grade, still not sure. And that's all I've got. So someone else want to jump in?
I would say this is definitely looking more middle grade. Just YA doesn't tend to have an animal as the focus. Just the solo cat's very middle grade, so if you're leaning YA, you probably want to have a person instead. And for middle grade, I think the cat needs to be maybe cuter, or like, because this is a very artsy, kind of scary cat. So like, I don't know, I'd look at the covers for the Rick Riordan Presents books, because those are good examples of middle grade fantasy covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my biggest thing. I like the cat. I like the cat with the moon. I even actually don't mind the typography, but I will say the typography gives me an idea that there's going to be more romance in this than you would normally see for middle grade. But I like the cat with the moon, but the art style itself is very gritty. So this tells me off the bat right now, it's going to probably be darker than I would feel comfortable letting my middle grade, or like if I had a middle grader, I would not necessarily be comfortable letting them read it, because the art style immediately tells me that this is going to be very heavy and very dark. Kind of think how like J.K. Rowling's more recent like young YA books came out and people were like, oh dude, no, this isn't actually like, this is darker than I want my kids to read, even though it was branded as middle grade. That's kind of the vibes that the current art style is telling me, but I like the composition for it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. It's too rough for what I've seen in middle grade and YA. And I know YA fonts are all over the place, but that one, it's hard to read for me, especially in the subtitle. I would change the subtitle to be whatever you've got for your author name and make it more about having the title having the different font, and make the rest just super readable.
I'll say your E's and S's are connecting. Do a quick Google search on kerning and how to space them a bit, because they're the only 2 letters that are touching, and my brain is glitching really badly about that. Like, it's telling me it looks wrong because of that. I think it would actually look really good if, because you have the beginning letter of each of those larger, if you made the S's bigger so that they could tuck under the E a little bit, I think that would actually look better.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to the next one, number 9. YA epic fantasy. I'm hoping they can give me some ideas on how to get rid of that nasty black line on the spine. So, I actually have already given the admin some ways to get rid of that black line on the spine. Basically, you want to blend it. Your artwork is dark enough already that that pale title will read, so I think you can just remove the black line and it will still read. I'm going to let someone else take over, maybe Sarah, because you do a lot of this.
Okay, sure. So what I really, really love this art. It's beautiful. I do wish there was, I guess, more of a focus. So we have the 2 main focus points of the dragon and the figure. but they're not super connected. And I also wonder about how visible the figure is at a thumbnail size. So you could try making the dragon bigger, making the person bigger. You've got a lot of negative space happening here. I mean, it's gorgeous, and I think it'd still sell books. So this is kind of a how to level up type thing.
Yeah. I kind of had similar feedback. You've got a ton of space at the top where there's nothing there. Put the author name at the top, move the title down so you can see your character more, because I think that would really help bring that focus area. Jamie, you do a lot of epic and high fantasy. Do you want to chip in on this one?
I had a couple thoughts. One, I love the typography, but I will say the typography is perfect if this is for a little bit younger YA. You know how YA right now, there's some like shady areas where really it's more adult type content, but with teens. If that's the kind of YA this is going, then you want to change the font, but I like the font for if it's a clean or fairly clean YA. I really do like that. I do agree with the negative space issue. Art style wise, again, I'm specifically talking about the YA aspect of this. The art is so pretty, and I definitely think it will sell. I do agree about the lack of focus. So when you have a composition that's like this, you have to make sure that the title is instead significant enough to be the first thing that your eye is drawn to. So when you think about something like this, I would suggest pulling up your cover on your computer or something, step away, maybe make dinner, do something like that. Don't let yourself look at it when you first come back, but kind of like close your eyes and open your eyes for a second and see where your eyes are drawn to first. Because you have to have somewhere that as people are scrolling on their phone, somewhere that is going to immediately draw their eyes to it and catch it, because otherwise their eyes scroll past it instead of catching on the cover for that split second. And like, this is gorgeous. You definitely want to make sure that it's going to pull that. And I think the main reason that this is going to struggle a little bit with that is because like Kingdom is pulling some, but the art is very low contrast, low saturation, which is my natural art style. So like, I get this, totally get this. I'm a very low saturation artist. But I think that because right now all of it is so low saturation and you don't have like a glow type of spot other than the tip of the eye, like your art doesn't have a really bright spot to catch the eye, or a really dark spot to catch the eye, I think that may end up affecting some of your ability to catch as many people stopping on it. I don't know if that makes sense. But I will say the art style though for it, and like for an epic fantasy YA, I think that this is a really, really smart, like I really like this, but just as some ways that you could improve it and potentially have it help you with potential sales, just something to think about while you're looking at it.
Yeah, for me, my eye goes to the horizon and that yellow, because yellow is like, well, not quite opposite to blue, but you've got the yellow and the blue, and the kingdom is being highlighted because of the yellowy color of the gold, and then you've got those clouds on the horizon that are yellowy, so that's where your eye goes. I think if you put some maybe like more around like the dragon to get his head to stand out, because his head kind of disappears into his body. You can tell it's a dragon, obviously, but it would be
like
really
almost
cool to have
like
that
the
stand
sun
out.
is peeking through. Sorry. Yeah, almost have it like the sun is peeking through the clouds behind the dragon, and have it like really illuminate him. That would immediately catch my eyes scrolling past it, like that broad kind of ripped wingspan. Yeah, I agree. That would definitely make this go wow.
Yeah, and dragons shout that genre, and that would draw your readers in, and then they'd come down to see the little person, and it would be, be great. So
yeah.
For covers with little people, like the little small figures against big epic fantasy landscapes, I would look at Jeff Brown's portfolio. because he does that so well, and his stuff really has the contrast we've been talking about here, where there's the central focus point with the high contrast.
Yeah.
There's a reason he's a $2,000 plus cover designer who's done the
Exactly.
backgrounds for some of Sarah J. Maas's covers. Definitely go look at his stuff. He's who all of us really learned our basics from.
It's
Yeah.
true.
And it's Jeff Brown Graphics, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely go have a look at him. Okay, on to the next one. Number 10, Dark Military Sci-Fi. It's a grimdark military sci-fi space opera. The rest of the series stays grimdark, but the military sci-fi aspect sort of falls away. I'm thinking about updating it, maybe adding a figure. I don't want things too cluttered, and I'm really trying to set up branding that can stretch the series. I've got a few notes on this because I've done some space opera. I haven't done any military sci-fi, but I've done space opera. And space opera and military sci-fi do tend to be quite different. I'd say either of them work with a figure, that route, and they tend to have like space stuff in the background. You get either like a full-on ship fight, or you get a person with space stuff. On this, I don't think you can just add a person to it. I don't think it would work, purely because of scale. You don't get a person that's, they'd be like, ant compared to a spaceship like that. So I think you would struggle to have both. I would totally change it or stick with it, sort of thing. One of the big things for me is the color scheme somehow is making this look retro. So if you look on the Amazon bestseller lists, they are pretty much black, blue, orange, yellow. There's no greens and browns, and they're also a lot crisper than this. Sci-fi, probably because it's like the future, it's very, very crisp, and this isn't coming across as that crisp. You've got sort of like the kind of glow around the planet that's, sort of soft, and you've got the glow around the edge of the spaceship, which is soft, and you need crisp, I think, for this. And I think as well, running sci-fi into grimdark is going to be really tough. They are very, very different. And what have I got? Grimdark, basically they have a lot of horror tropes. I don't know much about grimdark and horror, but at a quick look, there's no bright pops of color, and sci-fi is all about that bright pop of color. So they are two almost opposite genres to try and get them together. So I think you're going to struggle like that.
I would say with grimdark, when you have a bright pop of color, it's usually
Okay.
red. So you could go that route. I have sometimes seen. I don't really see a ton of green on like space opera books. You see them as like an alien trope sometimes, but not. I don't think that's what you're going for. Is the impression I have here. The main thing I would say is to change the text to white, just because I think that would make it a lot more easily readable. Like right now, the author name, I think, is too similar in value to the background behind it.
Yeah. The other thing I've been sort of like thinking of is at thumbnail, it's really difficult to tell that's a ship because you can't see the bits that define it as a ship, as in its edges. So I think you would almost be better to shrink the ship and make it an obvious ship. If you've got the ability to put in a space battle with multiple ships and colored like, laser fire, that goes really well with the genre. Anything that can make it obvious a ship. At this point in thumbnail, glancing past at a third of a second, like I said in part one, this could be a robot. It's got a body, it's got arms.
And it almost made me think it had a head.
Yes. Yeah, you can't tell. So I would really do your research like I taught you in part one and work out which way you want to go, space opera or military sci-fi or grimdark, and try and focus that one genre in really tightly and nail that one genre, and then bring in other bits that whatever it is that you want as your secondary and third genre.
Oh, I would suggest. I realized I have a comp title maybe.
Awesome.
Yoon-Ha Lee's Nine Fox Gambit, military sci-fi, very dark. Probably, I guess you can debate the exact definition of the word space opera, but it is set in space, so.
Cool.
I did want to say, I did a little digging into this. I think, was it the space opera part that they said that they isn't going to be in the rest of the books as heavily?
Yeah, the rest of the series is grimdark, and the military sci-fi aspect falls away.
Okay. So yeah, if you were going to stick with the military part, then the green and brown work. I will say from your crossover, your almost everything, when you pull up the categories that Amazon is going to put this into, almost, unless it's really a pure space opera, if you're going to be pushing the rest of the series fully into space opera, make book one, like Karen was saying, very clean with the ships, that kind of thing. If it's going to be staying more in the dark, with a little bit more of the military stuff, and even some of, like, if you're really going to push that crossover of all of it, almost all of them are coming back as people and as very dramatic, kind of gritty looking scenes, with like bright lighting behind them, kind of like what we were talking about with the previous cover. That's what almost all of those are coming back right now. I will say, I really wanted to make sure I said this, I love the typography on this, and I feel like your title area, I feel like that is such a like spot on branding. I love that. I think the composition of that is gorgeous. And this art itself, if you don't, if you do decide to go ahead and switch it up to try and be a little bit more to market, I think that this would be gorgeous inside your book, and use as like a title page, or even if you darken the bottom a bit. Like my own books, I do art for the beginning pages of all the chapters. If you darken the bottom behind that a bit, this would be gorgeous for that page. That kind of thing. I don't think this should be, I'm not saying like this is horrible and this should be scrapped by any means. I just think it might be better used in other ways. And I will say a lot of readers will specifically pick up a book because it has art inside the book. That's especially TikTok right now. Readers are freaking out about them and buying them like crazy.
Jamie is our definite expert on TikTok here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, from what I got from the guy, or girl, I'm not sure, is that it's the dark, the grim dark, and the sci-fi bit is what's falling away. But I could be wrong. But that's what I kind of got from the comments on what they submitted.
Yeah, this would be another one that'd be good just to look at, figure out your comps, and look and see what elements you're going to pull. This is one that I think is going to be really important for that.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I've got number 11, Artsy Ladies Psych Thriller. So, psychological campus thriller. A vicious serial killer haunts Quantum University and the students are locked in the campus. I would like feedback based on color scheme, fonts, and overall aesthetics on my recently made book cover, the author's name section in a placeholder until I come up with a pen name suitable for the genre. So, I've got comments from SJ and Jamie. SJ, we haven't heard from you for a bit. If you want to do anything, if not, then we'll go to Jamie.
I am not an expert in thrillers, but I did have a comment that this cover is reading more cozy mystery to me, actually.
I can see that.
Yeah, and that's just because of the vector artwork and like the silhouettes, and the more, I guess the typography is a little on the cuter side. More, I know it's going for creepy, but mashed up with the vector artwork, it's coming off as cute.
Cool. Jamie?
Yeah, that was the same issue that I was seeing with it. Is like I love the branding for your typography. I think that's really unique, and I think that will definitely stand out and like put you ahead. But yeah, I agree. The fact that it's all vector at the moment, my first thought was this is probably like a cute middle grade book where a school has monsters in it. Like that was my first instinct. So if you're, I think you said you were pushing for like thriller, horror, psychological stuff like that. That's going to need to be gritty artwork. Very, very gritty.
Yeah, and they're all photo based, it looks like.
Yeah. So that actually works in your favor because normally doing photo-based something is typically cheaper. And I think if you switched the artwork to something, I mean, don't get me wrong, if this is meant for a young audience, this is perfect. But if it's meant for an adult audience, I think if you kept this typography, but you changed the art to be gritty, and even if it was just the school, like part of the school that you could see, you don't have to see the whole school. But even if you just changed it to that, where it was like, this is a school, but the cover itself feels dark and gritty, that would nail the audience better than this if you're going for an adult audience.
I
Yeah,
agree
I
with Amy. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. I read a lot of psychological thrillers, and it's usually a woman, like zoomed in on a woman's face somehow, or sometimes it's a room or a house where the lighting is very dramatic, and the fonts are pretty much always sans serif fonts. For one that's a building that I can just think of right now, I think When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole is, I think it's an apartment building. So you look at other psychological thrillers, see how they take a building and make it creepy.
Yeah. I will say for a couple of, like, thank you, you gave me a couple ideas. Something that could be a good direction to go, if you want to go for the room, do something that looks like a school classroom, but with, like, desks askew, so it feels dark and kind of gritty. Like, that could definitely pull the student school but psychological thriller kind of thing. Even just like a lone desk in a like kind of rundown schoolroom kind of thing, or even having it so that, like she said, with the girl, but have it to where the girl looks younger. That sort of thing, I think, would be more marketable for you. This is cute and it's pretty. It's not something that we're saying is a bad cover at all. What we're saying is that we are worried this is not going to hit your target audience.
Cool. And I know absolutely nothing about psychological thrillers or anything like that, and I don't read them either, so take this with a grain of salt. For me, what I learnt on a course that someone taught me was psychological thrillers, you're trying to capture that calm before the storm, and a horizontal line, so like, the shore or something like that, or the horizon line, that sort of thing, tends to capture that stillness. And what I learnt was that was always good for a psychological thriller. So you want to capture that sort of feeling, if that makes sense.
I had something to interject really quick. I was just like looking up YA like suspense thriller novels, and in the voice chat I sent maybe a comp title, but yeah, they're photo based still, and they all have the gritty, like you guys are saying, the gritty aspect to them, and they have a bit of youth maybe in the typography and the title to indicate a younger audience. Cool.
Okay. If we could move on, and I didn't put the name down for this one. It's the aeroplane one. I don't know what I have it labelled as. 12 Zao Military Sci-Fi. That's the one. Perfect. Okay. Again, I don't do a lot of sci-fi, but I've done some. To me, this looks like an awesome game card more than a book cover. I would not have picked military sci-fi as the genre. And actually, let me backtrack. Let me read what they wrote. So this person provided a lot of questions and info, but I'm not sure what this means, TLDR, is that they made this cover themselves, and the story is a military sci-fi with a heavy focus on aviation. Primary objective for feedback. Okay, question 1. What genre plot expectations are communicated by the cover? Answer after you've analysed it. It's a sci-fi aviation, and the plot involves learning how to fly a plane on the cover, and we have already analysed it. It's all written up. Number 2, how eye-catching is the cover, and does it feel unique? Number 3, what else should be added, changed, better to distill the style and niche this cover belongs in? Number 4, positives, what can I keep, touch up? Number 5, improves to better communication to a prospective buyer what this story is, what it's going to be about, what to expect with the least amount of text possible, and 6, suggestions on my to-do list, and there's quite a lot more suggestions. So if I go back to that, question 1, to me it looks like a game card. I wouldn't have picked military sci-fi. What I would have picked was a sci-fi version of a lit RPG or a comic style story. That's what I would think if I just saw this as a cover. So for how eye-catching and unique, I'd say it's extremely unique. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a good thing. As we went through in like part 1, you need to fit into your genre with the cover expectations of your genre before you stand out. And I think that's the step you're missing here. So is it eye-catching? To my mind, not in the way you want. It's not going to be eye-catching to your ideal readers because they're looking for something that isn't probably this. So it's eye-catching as art. It's a nice piece of art, but as a book cover in that genre, I don't think your readers are going to find it eye-catching from that point of view. So what I think you could do to improve it, I would, frankly, and I'm sorry, I would ditch the panels completely. Focus in on a picture like your space scene, because that's what is in the genre. That's what the other covers have. Do a straight military sci-fi cover. The thing with military sci-fi, again, they usually have the coolest, highly detailed ships, often in the middle of a battle or a pursuit. So something that shows action. So I don't know if you've got something. I know your story is around learning how to fly a plane, but what do they do once they've learnt to fly it? Do they get into battles? Are they chased? Anything like that, that would make a really, really great scene for a cover. For what I love the planet. It's done so beautifully. Absolutely stunning. So yeah, that works if you get like a couple of spaceships firing across each other or a spaceship flying across this planet. That would just work so well. Again, I'm not a fan of the topography because you can't read it. And you've got it at smaller than this size. Thumbnail size is where they're going to first find it. And I don't know what your title is. Maybe it's Unit 1. But that's the only text that's realistically readable at this size. So that's what I do. I do that. And you could use this actually as a character card because it looks like a game card. And I think that would be really cool, like Jamie's been saying. Maybe add it into the extra, into the book, as part of a giveaway kind of thing. So does anyone else have any feedback?
Yes, I actually got really excited about this one. So I do agree. It looks like a game card. My first instinct was it made me think of the book, I think it's Illuminae? It's a sci-fi trilogy that the interior actually does not read like a book. The inside actually is all stuff like this, and it's all reports. And it's the only one of its kind, and there is a massive audience looking for other books that have these kinds of details. I mean, this is a massive, I think it's called the Illuminae Files, maybe? It's a YA sci-fi. Say it again?
Who's the author on that? Is it Jay Kristoff and Anne somebody?
I think so. I'm the worst at names. But my first instinct, it made me think of that. But even for them, what they did is they made their cover. Their covers for all of these are actually very simple, and they kind of make you think of like a case file, like a report sort of thing. So I like some elements of this, but first, Amazon, they expect their ebooks to be 5x8s. Normally, the only time that they will not cut off part of your cover is if it's for a box set. Almost all the other times, they will trim it down to that. So you'd be losing a ton of detail anyways, including your actual ship shape for the current size. I like the Unit 1 element to it, but I will say the art style, like Karen was saying, because of the level of detail on it at the moment, I love the reflection of the stars and all of that, but it is pushing a younger audience because of the level of detail that is on it right now and the style. I also really kind of like the little light with the box for the author name itself. And like I said, this genre normally, unless it's middle grade, does have more of a action type feel for the art itself. But this, I would definitely suggest looking up that trilogy and kind of seeing what they're doing for marketing. Take a look at it and see if it is something that could be a comp for you, because you clearly have a very creative mind and a really like a very interesting art level, and adding these kinds of things inside of your book could put you a step above a lot of other people. And I would suggest, especially if you're going to do that, it would take a little bit more time, but it could, especially if you can do the art yourself and do this yourself, it could definitely pay off. This would be really interesting for a like Facebook ad image. I actually take my character art, and it's expensive to print regular art. I put my character art inside my books, especially my hardbacks. My hardbacks have more art than others. This could be interesting if you decide to print with Ingram Spark. They have an option for hardbacks to do a double print where you have the dust jacket that has the regular book cover, and then under it has special art. This would be amazing done for that on the front of a cover, and maybe do it as like a special edition, or just have that be your main hardback like that. This could be really cool for that. I print my character cards as business cards because it's cheaper. But this would be a good shape. There's certain companies that will print this basic shape, especially if you adjusted it a little bit so it was a little bit more square. Put your socials on the back. Put your name on the back. Send it, like have it so you can hand it out to people. Have it so that you can send it as like swag with signed copies, that kind of thing. I think this is a highly marketable image. I just don't think it's going to do the job currently as a cover for drawing the people in to be excited and get all of those awesome marketing things.
100% agree with that. And if, Jamie said about this series, go look it up, because this happened in other genres like Ready Player One. Everyone loved and wanted something like that, and they went looking for it. So people started doing covers that were similar to it. So look at this series and work out which of it you can take inspiration from to show that, yeah, you're similar to that. If your book is similar to that, that it's different.
Make sure to look at the interior of that trilogy, because it will blow your mind. There is nothing else out there like that. And even if you just did a smidge of like added some details like this inside of your book, not even having to go to the full level that they did, but just add a smidge of some of these images inside of it would be huge.
Cool. Okay, so I think we've gone through all the covers. So hopefully you got stuff out of it. And I don't know if whoever's hosting this is still here. I'm hoping so.
Should we go through the questions that got asked in the voice channel?
Yeah,
The voice chat?
Hello.
I missed
Sorry.
them.
I had like 3 different mute buttons, so I was like, oh crap, trying to get through them. I did mention a couple times in the server that if anyone was a latecomer and wanted to offer up their cover like last minute, like there would be a moment at the end that they could. Do we have time for that? Do we want to do that after questions or questions first? I don't know if anyone here has a cover they want to throw up real quick in the audience.
If anyone has any covers that they want to do that with.
Anybody in the audience? No? Alrighty then. Okay, well, I have 4 questions here, and I'll just throw them up in voice chat, I suppose. Or do you want me, shall I read them to you?
Whichever.
Yeah, or both.
Oh, yes.
I
Perfect.
tend to see better than I hear.
So, first question from Ellie, or Eli. We have the Animorph part of it. I'm curious if it's an issue when a cover looks very much / similar to another cover. And this was in reference to the Animorph inspiration of Steel Scribner's cover. That's my child.
So the trick is unique but marketable. So what you really want to do is, again, this is part of why cover designers really have to work first with an author to figure out comps, is you want to take a couple elements that are similar to your comps so that it'll have that marketable similarity. But then you want to do a slightly unique twist so that it doesn't look like it could fit into that genre. But the issue is a lot of times especially, I know when I first started as an author, I was so afraid of looking like I was copying someone else's cover. I was so afraid of, like, my mind was so set on it has to be totally unique. And I didn't understand that my book cover is my number one marketing tool. And so if it's completely unique without enough of the cover tropes for your target audience, not just your genre, but your target audience, then your cover is no longer marketable. And 99% of your readers, your cover is the only thing they're going to see. It's the only thing that Amazon allows you to use for ads. It's the only thing that your readers that are scrolling through their Kindle or Amazon is the only thing they're going to see. So it is your number one marketing tool. So you have to make sure it's marketable before it's unique.
And I was going to say the one issue that you might have if you're doing the Animorphs thing is that was a trend in the 90s. So you're giving retro vibes, and people are really going to expect, like, it's like, you know, Ready Player One. Everybody expected 80s like references throughout the entire book, and if that's like really what you're going for, you can still maybe get Animorph vibes, but not have such a similar cover to the Animorph series. That you're going to be lumped with them, but that people still associate you with them. It's just a hard line to walk when you want to imitate something else. So I guess that's the problem that you might run into, is you might get people just having certain expectations because you look a certain way, which can be good and can be very bad, especially because it can look dated.
Yeah, and it'll affect your reviews as well, which is very disheartening.
And you need to be building your own brand. Plus, there can be, if it looks too similar to another cover, there can just be drama with readers and other authors, and you want to avoid that.
Yeah, Book Talk right now, there's a lot of drama from readers who are kind of upset because, especially in like YA fantasy, but really I'm saying that's all across the board, that there's some things that were too similar to other books. So they were having a hard time telling immediately when they're scrolling that it was by a different author, that it's not part of that series, that kind of thing. So that's also something to think about when you're doing it. That's why I said pick 2 or 3 tropes and then make it your own after that.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, go back, listen to number 1. It shows you how to research your genre and find those tropes so that you know what it is that you want on your cover. And if it's a trope, it's not the same as everyone else's book. It's just a trope. No one can say, you know, with a shifter cover, no one can say, oh, look, there's a girl and a wolf, you've copied that cover. That's just a trope, okay? So do your research, pull out all of these covers, work out what the tropes are, make sure you nail those tropes, and then try and stand out after that. But like I said in number 1, if they don't think your book is a story that's in the genre they're looking for, they won't go any further. So you have to nail those tropes on that cover.
Market to mood readers. They're the majority of readers.
All right, hello. Next question. Is there a way to keep on top of trends besides looking at recent published works, self and trade? Asking more in regards if there are additional ways to study this and be updated.
Jamie, you're our trends expert.
I tend to look at, I would say a lot of designers I know go and look at the current trends that are going on like once a month. I normally I go look at it every couple of months. And that's partially because I focus on making evergreen covers that have a couple small current trends for the genres. And not every genre is able to do this. Like, for example, you know, there's some actual just trends for books like monster romance. It's almost impossible to do a evergreen cover for monster romance just because it's not a genre that at the moment has proven to be an evergreen genre. But the biggest trick really is looking for something that you can make into an evergreen cover that will be able to adjust through whatever trends are going on, and just add a couple little tiny elements so that it feels updated and modern, but you're not going to need to recover your book in 2 years because the style has completely moved on from that. That's really the biggest thing that you're going to want to do. And to do that, look at current book covers, and then like I think all of us have massive Pinterest boards that are for like different target audiences. So we will actually save like the new books that have been releasing, the covers that we really like, so we can compare and look for patterns, because tropes are literally just the patterns. And unless you're a massive, massive author, if you try and just do a fully unique cover, it's going to flop, because you're not big enough yet to be able to make a trope, to make a trend.
Can I interject here as well? Because I have just worked with a massive author in her genre, paranormal women's fiction, and she wanted something that was different than the usual thing, so we did go slightly different. But like I said in the first part of this, we went through, we worked out what the 5 things are that had to be, the same to say the genre, and then I worked out which one of them I could change just to make her cover look different, but it still has all the other parts that scream that genre. So even if you're the top author in your genre, they're still sticking somewhat with the trends that you're trying to stick with as well.
Yep.
That's I'm going to interject too. That's also a good way for you to watch trends, is by finding like 5 authors in your genre that constantly sell, that are really big, and make sure it's either a traditional author or a self-published author, because that is a big difference, and will change for you on who you're looking at. But if you pay attention to what they're doing and like seeing what they're going to be releasing this coming year, usually you can see trends that way, because once the big author does it and it becomes really popular in the top 100, all the other authors are going to start following that trend. So if you look at that, compare it to evergreen things, then you can usually keep up with trends that way. But evergreen is usually the safest bet.
Cool.
Oh, hi. So next question is a little bit gee whiz. We've got, I'm curious for all our speakers if they have a favorite cover they have designed, either from self-published realm or trade published realm.
Wow, yes, lots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to have a favorite, though.
No.
We're not supposed to.
I'm trying to think. I have so many that I am like super attached to. And also, I will say, I know it's not just me, because I know all 4 of us have this issue. I think most of my favorites are customs, and oftentimes authors will book me 8 months to a year before they're going to publish. So almost all of my favorites are not actually published books. And so they're not ones that we're allowed to even say we did yet.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, it is true. I think almost all my favorites are customs, because I love doing customs, because I love having somebody else's input, and they're kind of like, well, I want it to be this, and it gives me a guideline of what to go down, and it makes the process so much easier rather than let's make a pre-made. It could be anything. Oh.
I think for what I currently have, like that I can show people, they're actually both pre-mades that I've made recently that are up for sale. I have one that I love that is a typography one that I'd made that's like really whimsical with like thorns and flowers and like keys hanging off of the thorns. I love that one. And then I have another one that is a woman, and she's like swinging this, what is it called?
Oh, a mace thing.
Yeah, a
I know
mace.
what you mean, Morning Star.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with like the chains whipping around and everything. You have no idea how hard it has been. They've talked me out of it multiple times. How hard it has been for me not to keep those 2 covers, because I love them. But I don't have stories for them yet, and I'm like booked out like 3 or 4 years before I would even have time to write a story for them.
I mean, I've got, I guess it's like probably most people, I've got my background on my computer as my 2 favorite covers. It's just the way it is. I stare at them all day.
Right.
I think,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, well, I mean, it's often like also the cover I just finished, but I guess, so my 2 favorite right now are probably the cover I just finished, and then it's actually a pre-made from almost a year ago that I still really love that just hasn't sold yet.
SJ, what's your two favorite?
Oh, I did just do one that actually was a recover, so I was lucky enough that it did get published pretty quickly. But that's so rare. But then yeah, it's hard to really love my favorites because there's so many that I can't show in my portfolio that I really love. But
I
you know,
know.
they're you have to wait until it's published, so it's hard.
It is hard. I think my two favorites actually aren't out yet. There was one I finished last week that I love, with just the color of the sunset in the background behind this couple, and the other one, it's a PWF one. So I love pretty. So anything that's super pretty, and that's what I love about PWF. It's got sparkles, and frankly, anything is better with sparkles. So that's been my motto for decades. So PWF kind of fits that. So I love the ones with lots of sparkles on, and this one just had just the right amount of sparkles in.
But I would also say for covers that we can share, if it's our favorite, we usually put it in our portfolio.
Yeah.
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 I do want to say too, because again, almost all of us write. I know I got into cover design because I was looking for book covers, and I was like, oh, I can totally do that, and I'll just make my own covers.
Mm-hmm.
So wrong. Those of you who are actually able to make fully marketable, good covers for yourself, especially after the book is written, I bow down to you, because I'm paying $500 for an illustrator to do the art so I can do the typography on covers, because my brain just can't do that. So for those of you who are able to, like, you're amazing on so many levels.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, I
so
love-
hard because you get so attached to your story and you
Yeah.
want to put all the little tiny details in there, and that,
Uh-huh.
like, as designers we know that you can't do that. You can't, because it looks terrible in thumbnail.
Yeah. I mean, I know, you know, and you guys know as well, that some of the top designers out there are also authors, and they hire someone else to do their cover because they can't do their own covers.
We work with a lot of designers that are also best-selling authors, and yeah, I only know of one that has actually decided to keep her own cover, and that was because it was a pre-made that she made and had this aha moment of, oh my goodness, I should totally use this and just recover this other book I already have.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, last question. This is from Jada Ben. For those first-time authors who can't afford $500 for a really good cover, or even $50 for a pretty okay cover, where would you guys recommend compromises on the cover if you can't have everything just the way you want it? Sacrifice artwork for typography, vice versa, color scheme. I'm curious what y'all would say to prioritize if you can't get everything as good as you'd want.
I think we had this question in part one, more or less. And I know at that point, the biggest thing I said was find a pre-made. Pre-mades are almost always cheaper than customs. Sometimes significantly cheaper, sometimes not, but even so. And they absolutely nail the genre, because that's the way we can sell our work, because authors, you know, should know what the cover tropes are in their genre, so they know what to spot in a pre-made. And so pre-mades are typically very, very heavy on the genre, and so that might be the best way to get a cheaper cover.
So if you
Yes.
need to do it entirely yourself, really tropes break down into font, saturation, composition, colors, and lighting. Font is the number one mistake I see people make on doing their own covers. They are by far the strongest trope. So make sure to study and nail that. And then I would say composition is probably the second most important one. There's nothing wrong with using stock photos. Nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you're using legal ones. But if you can get those two right, and then colors, I would say is probably the next most important one. Like if you're willing to take the time and really study those three, then that definitely like you'll at least be in the right direction. But yeah, font is the number one, and that includes author and title, and all of that. But you can learn almost all of that with DIY, like YouTube channels and that kind of thing. Like there's the information out there. Story Wrappers has a really good fantasy font information, and she's got a bunch of really good stuff. And find her on TikTok. She also has like some stuff to be able to help authors. Like she'll do videos that kind of help with learning some cover design stuff. But hopefully that at least is a start.
I want to interject here. If you're like studying a bunch of covers and you really love a font and you're like, what font is that? There is literally a website called whatthefont.com where you can put in a cover and it will try and find the most similar fonts for you so that you can like find the correct genre fonts and things that look like what you like.
Remember that fonts are also art. Books are art. You know, covers are art. Fonts are art as well. So they're also something you have to be careful of for licensing and make sure that it has commercial rights as well.
Yeah. Go back, listen to number 1. I do cover a lot of this in number 1. So make sure that you study up and it goes through all the 5 things you need to look at to like do your research. And this applies whether you're an author or wanting to design your own covers. It doesn't matter. Just look at those 5 things for your genre and make sure you know what those cover tropes are, and that includes topography.
Only show your cover to your actual target audience. Most people don't have the knowledge to, if they're not part of your target audience, most people are not able to tell that difference. So a lot of times authors get very confused, and it's why most designers, we have it in our contracts that you're not allowed to share your cover to people without our permission, because I know I've had multiple instances where it was a super marketable cover and it really did great, and then someone shared it with authors that are outside of that target audience and readers that are outside of that target audience, and they were given very bad feedback that the author wanted me to do, and I'm still paid to do it. I will do it, but they wondered why their cover didn't do as much for them, and it was because it literally removed the marketability, because it removed the tropes that we had in it. So make sure that if you're doing it, feedback is so important. We bounce ideas off of each other. We're like a critique group with each other. But make sure that you're only showing it and only getting feedback from other people who actually understand your target audience. Otherwise, it's just going to go backwards on you.
Yeah.
100%.
And also just to emphasize the thing with fonts, everything Jamie said, but also make sure they're readable. Sometimes you see people using these cursive fonts that you can't actually tell what the word is that well, or the background's too busy behind it, or various other things. There's a blog post I like that breaks down some common typography problems. I just posted the link to that in the voice chat.
Yeah, and as the resident topography person, if in doubt, leave it white or black if you've got a pale background, but most covers are dark. So, if in doubt, leave it white. There's nothing wrong with a plain white, but you can actually, if you make a mess of it and put the wrong layer styles on it, you can make it look bad. But no one is going to go, that's too boring, that doesn't work. White will work with everything if you've got no other knowledge of what to do.
True. And also make sure that behind your typography is low contrast. That's another big mistake that I see, because if it's high contrast, if there's lots of varying lights and darks behind it, it's impossible to pick a color or style. So no matter what font you choose, if it's too high of contrast behind your text, then it's going to cause problems. And especially if you're going to DIY it and use just a stock photo, that is something that you're going to run into.
Yeah. And there are as well, if you turn out to be an illustrator, like the person who had the beautiful dragon cover, if that, I don't know if you did that cover or you hired someone to do the artwork, but if you're that kind of illustrator, I know I do topography on illustration, and I'm sure the others do as well.
Yep.
So you can hire a designer who understands the genre to do the topography. And what I do for the authors that I do this for is I give them feedback at the sketch stage so that I know I've got enough space for the topography. So yeah, if you do hire an artist, like someone said, then you can find a book cover designer who can turn that artwork into a book cover, because the two are very different kettles of fish.
Yeah. especially since most illustrators are not, they don't know the marketing knowledge and compositions that are required for a cover. So that is a big mistake that I see is people will pay up to like a couple $1,000s for the art, but the contrast will be too much for the typography to be easily read. But I always suggest if someone's going to hire an illustrator and have someone else do the typography, hire your typography person first so that they can give that feedback and make sure that this is going to be the best thing that you possibly can. And hiring someone to just do the typography, especially if you hire them first, is really not that expensive.
No.
I'd also add to make sure the artist is making it at the right size and that's large enough, because I once had someone have existing art and come to me for typography, and the art was much smaller than a book cover.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that problem too.
Alrighty, thank you so much. I am all out of questions. For everyone in the audience, I have reposted the panel with all of our speakers in the mini lecture slides. Give their websites a look-see. And everyone get in voice chat and thank them for being here, for all of their insight and taking time out of their day to hang out with us. Thank you so much, guys. You're
Thank you.
wonderful.
It was fun.
And yeah, okay, bye.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.